Hi everyone, I am Devayani Upasani. I am a landscape architect based in Mumbai. I have my own practice and I am also a visiting faculty at a few graduate and postgraduate courses in architecture in the city. Today I'll be speaking to you all about site planning, which I firmly believe is one of the most important aspects, or rather the first step in the process of any architectural or landscape intervention, be it at regional planning level to the smallest scale of designing maybe a single structure. So, site planning, when done sensitively, is the first step to an architectural intervention which is true to its context. This is the first module of the course. The course totally has a time duration of around 1.5 hours. In this module, we'll have an overview of the course and also broadly understand what is the process of site planning. So, we'll begin with first understanding what does site planning mean. Site planning, as the name suggests, refers to the process of siting of various built and unbuilt functions and movement patterns on site. But it is not such a simple process. So, how does one decide the appropriate siting for the various functions? It requires the understanding and overlap of various existing layers to arrive at the best possible solution. This brings us to the question that what are the layers one needs to look into? Well, first and most importantly, it requires the understanding of the site one is to build upon. It is important to understand a site in terms of its context as well as the site as it is, as a site read or understood in isolation might not be analyzed correctly. The other important layer which plays a significant role in site planning is the understanding of the user profile. This includes understanding of the user character and user types. The third important aspect of site planning is understanding the design brief in terms of its physical footprint, requirements, interdependencies, specifics, etc. So, in short, site planning can be defined as the efficient arrangement of built and unbuilt functions or spaces along with the movement patterns on site based on the understanding of the following. 1. Analysis of the existing site conditions or factors, both natural and man made. Second, the understanding of the user and user requirements. And third, but equally important, is the understanding of the design program. In other words, it is the best possible response in terms of setting or citing of various requirements or functions on the site based on a thorough understanding of the existing site conditions and context, understanding of the user, user requirement, and design program. So the three primary layers one needs to study for site planning can be further subdivided to be studied under the following heads. The site and its context need to be understood through the analysis of the existing natural and man-made layers as they directly impact the position of various spaces on site. How to analyze these existing natural and man-made conditions or layers, we shall be dealing with the study later in the discussions ahead. The second aspect, as mentioned earlier, is understanding the user. To understand the user profile, one needs to understand the user characters as well as user types. The user characters can be further understood through the understanding of the following: the types of user, the age, gender, social, cultural, and economic background, etc., as it directly affects the way the user uses and perceives space. Similarly, the types of users, that is the primary user, the secondary user, the tertiary user, along with the overlap of usage, also directly affects the proximity and positioning of the spaces. It also gives clues to the overlap of use as well as deriving movement patterns. The third layer which helps in site planning is understanding and analyzing of the functions or the design requirements. This directly impacts the physical footprint as well as gives understanding about the ancillary area requirement. The analysis of the design brief also gives an understanding of the proximity or grouping of certain spaces based on their interdependencies. That is the interdependencies of the functions which directly affect its placement on site. At the same time, it also gives clues to overlap of functions, multiplicity of usage of spaces, which again directly affects site planning. Analyzing the design requirements also gives an understanding of specific requirements of a certain function, which again gives clues regarding the placement on site. The chart created by using these understandings of the proximities is known as a proximity chart. This analysis is further refined when one puts in the understanding of the nuances of the user along with the functional requirement as mentioned earlier. And this, when overlapped with the site understanding, gives the various possible solutions of citing the various functions which would work for the site. In other words, overlap of the above mentioned three layers result in the understanding of probable placement of the various functions on site. Now, here it is important to understand that all the three layers might not give the same clues regarding the placement of the function. In such cases, it becomes imperative to understand which layer holds more value in that particular context. This broadly defines the process of site planning, which we will be discussing in detail as we move further in the modules. So let us now look at the example of Virasat-e Khalsa, Anand Saipur, Punjab. Designed by architect Moshe Savdi, it is a classic example of sensitive site planning, which involves the understanding of all the layers mentioned above. The natural setting of the site and its context is taken into consideration in the way the built and unbuilt spaces are sited within the precinct. The main building of the museum complex is set in the existing undulating terrain, creating an appearance of rising from it. It appears to be rooted in the land. Use of the surface hydrology is made to aid the creation of a large water body as a foreground to the main structure. This not only allows the visitor to appreciate the grandeur of the structure, but enhances it as the visitor perceives the large main structure of the museum, which appears to be rising from the undulating terrain along with its reflection, adding to the sense of grandeur. Similarly, the sighting of the entry bridge, which again is set in such a way that it creates a disconnect from the larger architectural or town setting, which is again an important aspect in the journey towards the museum as it further aids the experience of the user within the museum complex. Here, the understanding of the primary user, that is the visitor to the site, is important for the movement pattern on the site, which is strictly pedestrian, is and it is created in such a way that it slowly takes the user away from the present to experience the exhibition housed within the structure. All the halls are housed together to create a seamless experience and requires a thorough understanding of the design brief. The placement of the amphitheater, which is a part of the site, but at the same time away from the main structure, so that the two events, if required, can run independently, is also a result of thorough understanding of the design brief. Here I broadly discuss the understanding of few layers involved in the site planning of the precinct. Once you start analyzing the same, you will be able to discern many more such understandings. You can similarly analyze the site plans or sightings of the following examples. Therme Walls, Switzerland by Peter Zumthor. In this example, it is very important to understand how the architect has sited the structure so as to not disturb the existing context. The Church or Chapel on Water, Japan by Tadao Ando. Here again, it is important to understand the siting of the chapel with respect to the resort, and again how sensitive site planning has resulted in an architectural intervention which transcends far beyond the realm of the requirements. The other example which one needs to look into is Kandalama by Jeffrey Bawa in Sri Lanka. This is again one classic example of very sensitive site planning where the site is located near a heritage structure, and how sensitive site planning is the key to make sure that when the even the architectural intervention does not disturb the existing context but borrows from it and again transcends beyond the realm of the physical requirements. With this, we'll end our first module of site planning. In the progressive sessions, we'll be taking up the various layers or aspects of site planning as mentioned in the beginning of this session and discussing them in detail. In the next module, we'll be talking about the understanding of natural layers for site planning. In this, the first layer which we'll be looking into would be climate. So I shall be signing off for now. See you all for the next session. Thank you.